Hello, my fellow career thought leaders. Good to see you all. Let's talk about kind of why and how we target a resume. And today we're going to talk about the foundational parts of it. How do we set it up to be targeted from the beginning? And then next week, we're going to talk about how you take a single job ad and target an already foundationed resume. So we're going to talk about how we get started, how we make sure it's aligned from the beginning, and then how we grade it a little bit just for that foundational resume. Let's get started and talk about how this comes together. So as we're talking, please feel free to share. Let me know what you think. I have a few ways for you to share today so that you can also contribute your experience and what your clients are seeing as we go through our examples today. Let's talk a little bit about the foundation and the reasons that someone gets rejected from their application, because I think oftentimes we want to blame the applicant tracking system. We want to blame that, right? And this is where a lot of people go right away, is the applicant tracking system kicked my resume out. As we've been talking about, that is not as prevalent as we think it is. So let's talk about some other reasons that people might get eliminated from the position. And I'd love for you to share these in the chat as we go as well. What are some reasons that you think people might be eliminated? If we're not going to blame the applicant tracking system, yes, we know that might happen, but it doesn't happen as often as we think it does, and very rarely just for formatting issues. We've covered that a lot in terms of what we need to do for the base applicant tracking system. If you have questions on that, feel free to put them in the chat. I'll put some links in the chat to some resources on that so that we can make sure that we're not doing a few formatting things that will get us eliminated. But let's stop blaming that and think about some other reasons that our client might be eliminated from these positions. So I'm watching your comments to see if there's anything you would share around why someone might be eliminated from a position, even if they're somewhat qualified. What else might be going on here that's getting in the way of them being brought in for that position? So let's look at a few that I just kind of brainstormed here, and then hopefully you can share some more in the chat. So hiring might have stalled. I don't think there's too many people that put a position posting out there to see what they might get, even if they're not hiring. That causes a lot of work for people that probably don't have time to do that work. Maybe, probably not, but it may be that they put the position out there and then the funding fell through, or the last quarter's results didn't look as good as the company that thought that they would. Something might happen in that process where it gets stalled, right? Ageism, overqualified, that is something that we'll talk about as we talk about targeting. Yeah. So there might be some weed out questions. So this is the most common thing that people will say, that ATS eliminated them, or maybe they got an automatic rejection. Guess what? That automatic rejection may actually be a human, the recruiter that looked at it and is just that quick. It may also be that they answered one of the weed out questions at the beginning incorrectly. So if it's asking, do they have X amount of years of experience? Do they have this degree? There will be questions programmed in on the front end a lot of times, and those questions the client has to answer the right way. Now, we don't want them to answer untruthfully because that will come out, right? But they might be eliminated because they're answering those questions in a way that isn't programmed in the back end. They might not follow the directions. So at one point, I saw some very big data points around this. 80% or 90% of people don't follow the directions. We want to make sure that our client is following the directions. Upload the cover letter if it says to. Upload it separately if it says to. Upload the file type of resume that it says. Anything that we can do to follow what they're saying, right, to make sure we follow the directions. There might have been an internal candidate. So they might have posted the position, had someone internal apply, and decided that they were going to only interview those internal candidates first. So they send everyone else that automated rejection notice. We just don't know. Now, what we're going to be talking about today is what can we do as much as we can to help our client not be weeded out because they didn't show they are qualified. Here's the general rule I hear from recruiters. our client needs to have 75 to 80% of the qualifications in the job description if they're going to apply online. If they're going to apply online, they need 75% to 80% of the qualifications listed on the job description. Does that mean they can't apply if they have less? No, it means they probably won't get through unless they have that referral, that way of connecting beyond just the job description, because they aren't qualified. They're not going to do the skills match, whether it's a human or a technology doing that skills match. They aren't going to match. So if there's anyone else that has thoughts around this, obviously, as the one comment said, bias, overqualified, we want to think about that. And actually, we can somewhat address those issues by doing the targeting process that we're going to talk about over the next 2 weeks. And today we're going to start with that foundation piece. So thinking first of helping ourselves and our clients really be thoughtful and not jump to conclusions that put us in a position where we don't have any power. So if I blame the ATS, I don't have any power, right? If I say, what could I do, or is there anything I could have done to make sure that I made it through? We can go the networking and referral route, recommended, and we can take a little bit deeper look at where we're starting at the very beginning from our marketing materials, which is what we're going to do today. So if you think of any other things, feel free to share them here. So one of the other areas that people often get challenged around is, how do we show that we're qualified? Where do we start with that resume? And where do we start to get people through the process? Now, this is the process that I use for a more entry-level to mid-level job seeker. And we'll talk a little bit about how it's different if we've got someone who is an executive, but this is more for that mid-level to executive level job seeker. How do we help them from the very beginning structure and focus their resume? What I love about this is that it also makes sure they've structured and focused their job search, because we're going to start with this really strong foundation. So when I work with a entry to mid-level job seeker, I always have them send me 3 job descriptions when we are getting started. At the very beginning, before I even do anything, even before I charge them, I have them send me 3 job descriptions. Why? Because this tells me how focused they are. If these 3 job descriptions are all over the place, then we're going to have a conversation about where do they want to start, what type of job do they want to start with, or do we want to do some career focus work before we dive into the resume? Because if you're sending me 3 very different job descriptions, I know that it's not going to work to write a resume to those 3 job descriptions. So we're going to have to focus in. And the example that we're going to be looking at today, this is a contact, someone that I know, like, and trust, and I want to help them. So I thought, well, I'll use them for our guinea pig today. And this person is applying to both kind of marketing brand manager positions and learning and development roles. 2 separate things, 2 separate resumes. And we'll see a little bit of why today, and then we might take a little peek deeper next week at even more why. But when we've got 2 different jobs that we're targeting, we need 2 different resumes, because otherwise there's no way we're going to show up as the most qualified candidate for that job that we're targeting. So this is where I always start with my clients. And like I said, a lot of times I'll do it even before I charge them, because I don't want to charge them for a resume and then have them be all over the place and be trying to force it because they've already paid me. So I'll do this in my pre-work. I know there are some people that will go out and find job descriptions for their clients. I don't do that for this exact reason. I want to know what they're targeting. I want to know what they're seeing, and I want to put them in the driver's seat, versus if I go and find a project manager position and it's not quite what they're thinking, then we're starting out on the wrong page. If they send me the job descriptions, that's great. For executives, this often doesn't work because they can't find those job descriptions. So then we might just jump in here at number 2 with those folks. With mid-level people where there are job descriptions posted, we're going to start there. We've got an employer focus from the very beginning that way. Then we dive into the top qualifications of the job. And I can look through the job descriptions before I talk to the candidate and know what I think the top 3 to 5 are. And then usually my first question to them in our meeting is, what are the top qualifications that they see in the job? Most of the time those line up. They don't always. So I might end up with 5 or 6 that I'm asking about as we dive into the next part, which is, what are your top selling points according to these qualifications? So I might say, tell me about a time when you've demonstrated this, and I'm looking specifically at the qualifications. This way, the strategy of the resume and the targeting is from the very foundation. We're not trying to target it at the end. We're not trying to sugarcoat it, or, whatever word you want to use, where we're glazing over it at the end. We're starting at the very bottom with this targeted foundation for the resume. Then I'm going to go through each job in reverse chronological order, because their most current job is the one that recruiters are going to place the most value in. And I'm going to dig for, when have they demonstrated the specific qualifications for that job? I'm not going to talk about everything that they did. We might talk about some really notable things, even if they aren't quite aligned. But the first place we're going to start for every single job is, how did they demonstrate the qualifications from that job? We're going to get this story. We're going to talk about what was going on when they came in and the context and all of those things. But my line of questioning is always going to come back around to make sure we're focused on telling the stories that show the qualifications from the job descriptions that they've sent to me. This way, it's targeted from the very beginning in their work. And when we do that, one, we can somewhat avoid the ageism, because if they're applying for a lower level position, we're just going to talk about the things that relate to those qualifications. And I'm going to be careful to not, as one of my colleagues from the Workforce Center used to say, overshoot the runway. It doesn't do my client any good to show how much more qualified they are. That's where we get the overqualified. So I really need to right size it to the position. And in fact, one of the job descriptions that my current client is looking at is a lower level position. It's a content creator versus a marketing or brand manager. And she and I will talk about that. She can target that, but it's going to be a really pared down version of the brand and marketing resume, because otherwise she's going to get that overqualified, which she's already gotten when applying to a similar role. So it's really that targeting process that can somewhat help us get past that overqualified and ageism. And then, of course, we want to think about how far we're going back, especially with the dates and the details, and how we're aligning them to really match up with the company and their culture just as much as anything else. This person was recently eliminated from a position, was at the right level, but I'm guessing the company culture did not align with her culture and her age, which is unfortunate. And there may have been things in the resume that she could have done to make herself appear younger and more hip to their culture, and it may just not have been a good fit. And that's always the case too, right? That at some point we can target and we can learn the culture and we can adjust our materials for that culture. And when it comes right down to it, it may just not be a good fit. So let's move into looking at how we might target this foundational resume. So I'm not looking at a specific job description yet, just looking at the very foundational resume. And where we're going to start is actually with a compilation job description. So I put this together for this individual based on the jobs that she had sent to me that she was interested in. And this is just a data dump of these job descriptions. So senior brand manager, I took out the company, took out as much as I could of the junk, right? We don't want the beginning stuff and the end stuff, because that might put in keywords that aren't important. And this first job description was a little over a page. Then I've got a second job description here, a similar one, a little bit different, but similar enough that I feel like we should be able to have a resume that would target these positions. And then we'd go back and target the resume specifically at the end. But this is for that foundational resume. And I could do this process that I'm going to show you before I talk to the client, or I could do it after we've got the base resume going and make sure that we've hit the keywords. Either way, depending on my process and how I want to put it together. So this is 3 job descriptions, and I went ahead and put the copywriter one in here, even though I think it's a little bit lower level, because it is on target. It's in the same line that we want to be able to make sure we've got all of the pieces put together. So this is 3 job descriptions combined and dumped together that are going to help me get a better result in the systems that we're going to be looking at. And I did the same thing with the resume, took out the company names and the person's contact information. I mostly did that to protect this fake client for today. And we might want to do that when we do the scoring, just so that we're getting as pure of a score as possible. So let's look at what happens when we take this into some of the systems that we're going to look at. The first one we're going to look at is simple and free. We're going to look at 2 free systems, actually, because I don't want to be promoting anything that's not free, but we are going to go through some of the paid systems on Thursday in the Facebook group. So if you're not a member of our Facebook group for career service providers, recommend that you join that, because we're going to go a little bit deeper into these scoring systems on Thursday in the group. Today, we're just going to go through a few 2 free ones so that you can see how they look and how that works. So the first one is Tag Crowd. So this is the tag crowd of the resume. This is the tag crowd of the resume. And you can see the words that jump out at us: communication, development, leadership, marketing, presenter. Those are the words that are showing up more often in her resume. Now we can do the same thing and go to the tag crowd of the job description. So let's look at the tag crowd of the job description and see how they are similar. So you could do this side by side. Unfortunately, I couldn't figure out how to make it side by side for you on my computer, but you could do this side by side. And let's make sure I got the right one here. Yeah, so this is the one from the job descriptions: brand, building business, campaigns. So there's some words here that we didn't see in the resume really at all. We need to align these 2. Free, easy, quick tool for you that you could use if you're doing it on the front end. I could put the job descriptions in here and make sure I ask questions about these skills when I'm doing the resume intake session, or I could do it on the back end and see if I missed something. Doing it on the front end may be more efficient, although I did not help this person with their resume, so I'm guessing we'd get a closer alignment even if I hadn't done this with the job descriptions, because looking at the job descriptions, we can get some of this information without using the tag crowd. Quick, easy way to be able to do this. And it's visual, not necessarily something I would recommend putting on a resume as a visual, but you could use it that way if you wanted to. So those are some of the options there as we're checking on our keywords. So let's look at one other system where you could put in the information and be able to measure what's going on. And this one, thank you to Tom Powner, who suggested this one as we were going through one of our sessions a while ago so that we could look at this today. So this is Skill Syncer, and it is free. You can upgrade, but it doesn't, I haven't seen yet that there's a limit for doing these free checks. The nice part about this one is that you put in the job description and the resume, which I've already done here, and then you come up with this score. You can sort the words by the job or by the resume. So I can click on these little carrots over here and be able to change it from, and here you can see the job lists this word one time: socks. Not sure why socks is in a job description. I'd have to go back and check that one out. That's interesting. But more importantly, the words that are in the job description more frequently, like writing, marketing, business, and then how much are those in the resume? I can sort by the resume. That probably wouldn't give me a lot of information. I also like that it's looking at hard skills, soft skill. Some of the soft skills here, like writing, probably really are a hard skill for these jobs, but it gives us that option to see what are the words in the job description, how do those align with what's in the resume, and then what do I want to do next. So I don't know if Tom, if you're here, if you've played around with this more, if there's anything else that you would point out that we should be aware of here. I like this skill sinker because it's free. You can upgrade, but this part of it's free. Gives you those hard skills, soft skills, and you could do this with the job description before you met with the client. I don't know that that would give you great results because it's meant to do the comparison. You could do this with that foundational resume and a conglomerate job description, which is what I've done here. I put all three of those job descriptions in there, and then I would put in the resume after we rework it, because obviously we're seeing here that there are some areas for improvement. So we can do this test for that foundational resume, and then we would move into how do we do targeting per specific job description, and how do we do that? And we'll look at that a little bit more next week. We're going to do it the low-tech way. So how could we do it the really low-tech way? Because that might be what we want to teach our clients unless they're interested in using a system like this. And then we'll look at doing it with a system like SkillSyncer. And I'm hoping that I'll be able to show you kind of the transformation before and after if I work with this person and help them get the right content into their document, and we can see how well it's aligning to these job descriptions. So we're starting at the very beginning. We're thinking about how can we help the client not just have the information that is the surface information, but really starting back at the beginning. And if you're already a professional resume writer, you're probably doing this, and helping your clients do this from the very beginning is critical. Figuring out what the jobs are actually looking for, comparing it, matching it, pulling some job descriptions together so that they can think about those top qualifications, and then really showing their proof points as they align to those roles. So we are starting our Academy Resume Writer position, our Academy Resume Writer program next week, next Thursday, and no, not next Thursday, 2 Tuesdays from today, 2 weeks from today, we're starting our program. So if you're interested in getting some feedback and writing better resumes, I'd encourage you to join us, or ask me if you want to get some more information about the program. You can message me here on Facebook. And as I said, on Thursday, we'll be going through more of the scoring systems and talking about the pros and cons. If you've been thinking about, should I upgrade? Should I pay for something? Join the Facebook group. You'll be able to watch that video live on Thursday, or watch the recording, like you can watch the recording of these videos here every week. And we'll be back next week to look at a specific job description. How do we target our resume to that specific job description? And how might we even create some basic directions for a client to target their resume that we could send along to them so that they could do this each and every time they apply, and do it quickly because they've started with this strong foundation. Let me know if there's anything else that you would want us to talk about or cover, and we will see you maybe on Thursday in the Facebook group if you're interested in looking at some of the scoring systems, the resume scoring systems. And if not, we'll see you on Tuesday to look at some specific resumes.